Okay, this one's for the literary girlies. I want to talk about this scene as it relates to Jane Eyre. I've always felt when reading this part of the book like it immediately draws a connection for me, and I really feel that in the show they've been presenting this deeper motif of bleeding and two people's hearts bound together by a string. In the book, Conrad says, I have this feeling in regard to Belly, that you'll always be there, here. And he says this as he claws at his chest and confesses the love that he's always held for Belly, in spite of her inability to believe it in this moment. And in one of the most profound confessions of love, Mr. Rochester says to Jane, I sometimes have a queer feeling with regard to you. It is as if I had a string somewhere under my left ribs, tightly and inextricably knotted to a similar string in you. And if that boisterous channel and 200 miles or so of land come broad between us, I am afraid that cord of communion will be snapped. And then I have a nervous notion I should take to bleeding inwardly. We've heard that invisible string is Belly and Conrad's song at their happiest, and this invisible string of fate is expressed in the physical string of the infinity necklace. Red string theory, or the string of fate, is a concept that essentially suggests that all of life is a journey through twists and turns that guide us to where we are destined to be and the soulmate we are destined to be with. Destiny, as we've seen, is something that's deeply important to Belly, and we've heard her telling Conrad, you are right where you're supposed to be. Their hearts and even their thoughts are seemingly connected by this string of fate. That string is also reflected in the pain they feel in their chests. We see Conrad clutching his chest as we saw him here in season 2. He tells Jeremiah that he thinks about Belly all of the time and it physically hurts his chest to not be able to tell her he loves her. This is the tragedy here in this scene. Everything could have gone so differently if he just said those words out loud. And this is why Conrad bearing his soul on the beach is so deeply profound for his character's growth. Everything comes full circle. And in a similar, equal experience, Belly tells Taylor there's pain in her chest whenever she thinks about Conrad. We audibly hear the beat of her heart as she's tending to Conrad's bleeding wound, where once we saw her weeping and heard the words, my heart won't start anymore, here, we see her jolted back to life as if her heart were hit by lightning. She collapses and clutches her heart in this moment as another reference to bleeding is heard. Blood is a subtle yet consistent motif, especially in the lyrics of the songs. They've both been internally bleeding, and this is expressed in the physical band-aids, wounds, and bleeding we've seen, in the consistent reference to hearts as well as the jolts of electricity. Conrad says that heart disease runs in the family, and Adam teases him about becoming an electrician. This, I think, is all a metaphor. Conrad says that being with Belly again felt like being hit by a thunderbolt, and he says in season 2 he could never be with someone who didn't make him feel electric. There's a notion their hearts have been dying and come back to life when they're close to each other. They need that electric shock for their heart to heal and keep beating again. These are twin flame souls having the same internal conflict, and they face one another as equals. Jane and Edward are twin flame souls themselves, divided by class and social circumstance, yet they vehemently assert they are equals. And the bond they share at Thornfield Hall gives Jane the first real feeling of home she has ever truly felt in her life. I think the same can also be said of Belly, and Conrad's insistence that Cousins is just as much her home as his, even when they weren't together, speaks to the deepest sense of equality. Belly is indignant against this confession of love with the same ferocity as Jane. Jane believes Edward is mocking her, and Belly believes the same. Both women assert their will and independence even though deep down both are in love. This is a powerful move towards self-respect. Through different situations, the willingness of Jane and Belly to walk away actually signals their inner integrity. And I love this quote from Jane. She says, I am no bird, and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will, which I now exert to leave you. Do you think because I am poor, obscure, plain and little, I am soulless and heartless? I have as much soul as you and full as much heart. It is my spirit that addresses your spirit, just as if both had passed through the grave and we stood at God's feet equal. As we are, Mr. Rochester echoes. And I think there's a parallel here in Belly's determination, really since season 1, whenever facing off with Conrad, to maintain her independence and assert her self-respect. Conrad always lets her go. This is the push and pull between them as they both are coming of age and finding themselves and finding their path. She doesn't have this with Jeremiah. She always folds to whatever he wants. I think there's much to be said of love and self-respect. You have to love and know who you are before you can truly love someone else. I think there's much to be said of fate and free will. It's almost as if Ellie can't truly find her path until she's willing to first choose herself. And this is a step towards doing that. She has always had that freedom to do so with Conrad. And I think there's a beautiful theme of equality. Both of them bleeding inward and outward. Both of them bound by a pain in their chest. Both of them bound by a string on a chest. And both of them destined to find their own paths, but both of them destined to return in the end. It all goes back to this string.